What's good, folks? It's Frame here with a new Warframe video, coming at you with a melee enthusiast video. Here we're talking about the best melee Warframes and why they are the best at what they do. But before that, we're going to take a little history lesson and discuss what makes a melee Warframe, to then give you an idea what you need to look for when it comes to melee Warframes. Speaking of history, with the advent of the Galvanize mods and the gun arcanes, we did see a massive dip in melee popularity, and I did make a video about it, talking about how melee sucks right now, but it was back then. During that time, AoE weapons like the Kuvazar, Kuva Brahma, anything that had massive crowd-killing potential was just very dominant. It was way better for you to use those types of weapons than use a melee. But of course, that did come to an end with the great ammo nerf. And this did bring a nice balance between guns and melees. But then incarnate weapons and incarnate adapters got introduced. And here we are again. But still, melee has been getting stronger and stronger ever since the release of the melee arcanes. It's like DE goes and nerfs something for something else to be stronger, to nerf that thing, to go back to the old thing, to then nerf that, to go to the old thing that was nerfed. It's just a vicious cycle. It's like they have a hard time with balancing. So, what advantages do melees have over guns? Simple. They're inherently AoE because they have a swing radius, which is then increased by its range stats. Melees don't have to reload, which is another benefit, so it doesn't consume ammo. Destiny, you know. They have a stance mod, which improves their damage and the way that it attacks, because stances do have some damage multipliers and force procs to apply a specific physical damage type. On top of that, melees have better scaling with little investment. If they have decent crit stats, status chance, and a slash weapon, basic modding will allow that weapon to scale way better than a gun. And of course, with the recent introduction of melee arcanes, melees have gotten a bit stronger. So, what determines a melee Warframe in your perspective? If you didn't have to think too hard, you would say any Warframe that uses a melee or has melee abilities. That would actually fit someone like Baruch, but Baruch isn't a melee Warframe. Funny, I know, but he is a Warframe with an exalted melee ability. Still sounds confusing, but we'll get to that. Yet Excalibur is the same deal, but is considered more of a melee Warframe than Baruch. Now, why is that so? Let's take a look at Excalibur real quick. His passive grants him bonus damage and attack speed when wielding swords. That benefits melees. That also affects his fourth ability, which is a melee exalted, which is also a sword. And then his first ability, Slash Dash, is a pseudo-exalted weapon. Excalibur is the only frame currently in the game that has a pseudo-exalted and an exalted. So this ability itself is ability damage and melee damage, and it scales off melee equipped mods. Yet at the same time, it has an augment that allows it to build up combo, benefiting any equipped melee. His second ability, Radial Blind, blinds enemies and has them susceptible to stealth multiplier damage, which is a melee trait. And then finally, Radial Javelin has an augment called Furious Javelin that gives a melee damage multiplier, which is essentially an eclipse just for melees. All of these abilities and tools that he has buff melees, and Baruch has nothing of the sort. Because if you were to say Baruch is a melee Warframe, then yeah, Atlas, Korra, Gara are melee Warframes, because they also have melee abilities that are pseudo-exalted weapons, which is kind of odd to say Korra is a melee Warframe. That doesn't make sense. Gara's main damage comes from her second ability, which is built up by dealing melee damage to her fourth ability. But yes, there are ways for you to build her for her first ability, so that does confuse some people. So if you want to categorize what a melee Warframe is, you got two things. They need to give some utility and damage buffs to melees. Well, now when we take these two categories, we start to think a little bit outside the box, because those two things that I just mentioned go really well with Harrow. Yes, a lot of people don't know this, but Harrow is actually a pretty good melee Warframe. His second ability grants him attack speed, and his fourth ability gives you crits. Two very important things that you want on melee weapons. Attack speed and crit, that's if you're building a crit melee. But Harrow's more of a weapon specialist, so that means he can work with both guns and melees. Same thing applies to Gus. He gets bonus melee damage with his second ability active, and he gets attack speed with his fourth ability. But you won't say these guys are melee warframes. But now that we've gotten those two main categories that define melee warframes, let's take a look at actual melee warframes. At the moment, we have two powerful melee warframes, and there is a divide on who is better, and that is Voruna and Kullervo. Both amazing melee warframes. Yet let's take a look at what really makes them melee warframes. Let's take a look at the new boy in town, Kullervo. Now, if I had to ask you, what ability really defines Kullervo and makes him deal the damage that he does? I did ask this question on stream, and of course there was a divide, but there is one correct answer. Some of the people said Wrathful Advance makes Kullervo. This is the ability that makes him do a lot of damage. And then there were the smart guys who said Collective Curse is what makes Kullervo do a lot of damage. And this, in fact, is the correct answer. Wrathful Advance by itself is just a heavy attack, a regular heavy attack that scales off your weapon's mods, and all it does, it gives you a flat crit chance buff. That's it. You're just essentially getting a free heavy attack animation and a crit chance buff, but all of the damage is scaling from the weapon. But then Collective Curse allows you to take all of that damage that you deal to one target and spread it to everything. This is what makes Kullervo nuke. Okay, so normally if I were to heavy attack with the first ability, I just kill a couple of enemies right here, which is not bad. But then what happens if I'm able to target everything here with Collective Curse? One person survived. But you can see the difference, how Collective Curse is what makes Kullervo. Without that ability, he's just a heavy attack bot that gives you crit chance. So yeah, Collective Curse links all of these enemies together, and whatever damage you deal to one target will be spread to everything that is linked. But now think about it. I didn't have to use my melee there to do that. So that means Kullervo can also be a gun warframe, can also be an ability DPS warframe. The only thing melee about him is his first ability, yet you don't even need to use it as a melee ability. You can use it as a movement tech and giving you free crit chance by aiming at the ground or away from enemies. So now that makes you think, what is he exactly? He's just a nuking warframe that has a melee first ability, yet is considered as a melee warframe because his second and fourth ability benefit combo. But right now I have infinite combo. The second ability is just there for overguard. If you haven't seen my recent Kullervo build where I have Kullervo always have infinite combo so you can spam his first ability using melee crescendo, do go check it out. The other thing that benefits him as a melee warframe is that his passive grants him heavy attack efficiency and bonus heavy attack windup speed. You think about this and it's like, oh, this is pretty good. That means I can use quite a decent amount of melee weapons to improve his heavy attacks. So he's locked into this heavy attack playstyle with his first ability. Otherwise, if you want to play him as a regular melee warframe, it won't feel as satisfying. See, that doesn't have as much impact as the 3-in-1 combo did. So if we're to use a different weapon, it's definitely slower. Even though a two-handed Nikana will deal more damage, it's just slower than using a dagger. So now even with that wind-up speed passive that he has, you might even have to run a wind-up speed mod in the aura or even on the weapon itself. Pretty much a similar build to what I have on the dagger. So now instead of running Organ Shatter, I might have to run Amalgam Organ Shatter to bring that wind-up speed to a 0.3, while the dagger already has 0.2 with just his passive. Because you have to also understand is that the attack speed and the melee archetype also matters. As you can see, similar build, but of course we do have the benefit of running a Zaw and a Zaw Arcane. Animation is way different and faster. Now let's go over to the Warframe that really takes melee to the next level and is a better melee Warframe than Kullervo, and that is Voruna. So why is Voruna a better melee Warframe than Kullervo? And you're saying she's a better melee Warframe, yet you use Kullervo's first ability as her helmet. That's exactly my point. That one ability that made Kullervo a melee warframe can be used on literally anybody. You see what I'm saying? So what's so special about Voruna? Let's start off with the most impressive thing, and that is she has 4 unique passives, which are tied to her abilities. The first ability passive makes her a speed frame. The second ability passive gives her complete status immunity. Oh, but Kullervo has status immunity. True, but only with Overguard. Otherwise, once that's depleted, boom, he's nothing but health. That's another bonus that Voruna has, is that she has status immunity and shield gating, which is way better than Overguard gate. So this gives her better survivability. On top of that, she has invisibility for another layer of survivability. And what does invisibility do with melees? Well, it gives you stealth multiplier damage on unalerted targets. Oh, it's fine. I don't need that. Kullervo can just press 3 and 1. If that's what you want to do, you do that. And then we look at her third ability's passive. This gives half of Kullervo's passive. Just think about that for a second. But let's take a look at the first ability by itself, because her first ability, Shroud of Dinar, is a freaking hefty ability. Because it offers you so much. Makes you invisible. Gives you a speed multiplier, so you move faster. And if you want to do spies with her, boom. That passive and all the other movement techs, you're sorted. Now, it also gives you a critical damage multiplier. Something that's very unique to Voruna. At the same time, this gives you absolute status chance and crit chance, meaning a flat increase. This absolute status chance means that you don't need to run Weeping Wounds on your melee, saving you a mod slot. And of course, it doesn't pair really well with Weeping Wounds. And that absolute crit chance makes all of your attacks have 100% crit chance. And finally, every hit that you deal when you come out of the shroud procs slash, guaranteed slash proc. So you can go with a heavy viral build on your weapon, come out of Shroud of Dinar, you're proccing viral and slash at the same time with every single hit. So let's have a look at the Tombow. I picked this weapon in particular because it is one of the lowest crit chances in the game. And the build, as you can see, bland, nothing. When I attack with this weapon, you're expected to see white numbers. Of course, with a 5% chance of me critting. So all of these white numbers are non-critical hits. Then I use Shroud of Dinar, and now all of my hits are critting. And I'm applying bleeds with every hit. And if you pair this up, Shroud of Dinar and Kullervo's first ability, oranges. And of course, the random red. So Shroud of Dinar itself has a 3-second duration, but when you kill an enemy, it extends that duration. As you can see, just this loadout right now will have me shred everything, go invisible. Use my second ability to prime enemies. And that was way more damage than what we were dealing before. And the thing is, Voruna can do this with a lot of weapons as well, and just make them feel way better than they already are. But then we can also use a dagger with Voruna. You pair that up with your Argonac. Now you have a weapon that doesn't have any crit on it because you're already using her first ability, Raffle Advance. Oh yeah. Now, of course, what's so special about Argonac? Well, because now all of my dagger's hits will armor strip, and that means the damage over time will armor strip as well. Electricity is a damage over time, instantaneous damage over time, and it's AoE, and it's made even more of an AoE thanks to melee influence. So with that ability alone, we get all of these bonuses. And then we also have a primer that applies 10 stacks of every single moddable element in the entire game, and physical damage types as well. Now, what makes her more unique and way more versatile than Kullervo? It's because that Kullervo's collective curse always needs to be 200% strength so it can get that 100% damage spread. Anything lower, Kullervo just doesn't seem that great to use. But if you're looking for a melee warframe that is clearly the melee warframe, then Voruna is your pick. But if you want warframes that offer you other things, but also buffing melee, then you do have warframes like Gus, Harrow, Wisp, Saren, yes, she's a weapon specialist, who's very good at that as well. Excalibur with melee. All of these warframes benefit melee in a certain way. So Gauss, not necessarily a melee warframe, but you do have the first ability, Augment, to group in enemies. and boom, do things with your melee. If you want to see the builds for both Voruna and Kullervo, do go check out the links that I will provide you in the corner or even in the description. Anyway, folks, that has been it from me. I do hope you enjoyed and learned something from this video. If you did, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe for more Warframe contents, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, a peace. Bye-bye now.